Welcome to the Safeguarding Way, and this episode 5 is being released in December 2025, right within Hanukkah and Christmas period of celebrations. Deeply honoured to welcome our inaugural guest, Dr. Darren Mort. Dr. Mort is a barrister at law, family law mediator, arbitrator, global presenter, children's author, film director, actor, and Australian War Award recipient. And in fact, he's multi-talented. His decades of expertise and profound passion for giving children a voice set the tone for this podcast. As a dedicated family law barrister in Melbourne, he specialises in areas including domestic violence, child protection and intervention orders. His commitment is focused on facilitating communication for separating families to minimise the impacts of family disputes on children, prioritising their well-being and amicable solutions. Dr. Mort has a deep commitment to advocating for children's rights, and through his charity, as well as his podcasts, he provides media such as, like I said, children's books, documentaries and films, as well as another book that I believe has come out, aimed at helping children navigate the difficult experience of family breakdowns. I hope this particular episode can help bring peace to your family, especially those that are suffering from separation chaos with the family court system and within your own relationship as parents. Please join us as we walk through the Safeguarding Way, where faith becomes action and every life is worthy of protection. Hello, Darren. How are you?
Hi, Ballina. Well, thanks. How are you?
I'm okay. Look, it's been a long time. We were at the Safe Children's Conference back in 2019, which I believe you flew over to Sydney and spoke at CAPS, which is Child Abuse Prevention Services, to which I was the head of innovation projects back then. So it's been a while. I believe you've got another book that's just launched. Is that right, Darren?
Yeah, I have. I've got a little book called Millionaire Magic Puppet Show. And it's quite a good book, actually, in the sense that my daughter, who's a clinical psychologist in Sydney, she wrote the back part of it, which sets out 10 questions for parents to ask their children after reading the book.
Right.
So it provides fertile ground for discourse between a child and their parent. And often children in situations of conflict find it hard to express what they're feeling, why they're feeling it. And I'm hoping that those sort of questions will help tease those issues out, and so children and parents can discuss matters, and hopefully parents can make children feel a lot better and safer.
Oh, well, I hope so. It sounds like you're continuing this path. What really inspired you or motivated you? I mean, I love meeting people like yourself and me because we're multidimensional. I'm an opera singer and a performer. So
yeah.
And then I do, startup, I do all different things. And then to meet an award-winning barrister who was also very creative and acting and film directing. I mean, what your journey? So what inspired you to go down this particular route, but from a creative level and from a child safety level?
Well, really, it's so I've always had two careers. I've always been a barrister and an actor, essentially, when I drill down to my main interests. And in 2016-ish, I was on the Domestic Violence Task Force Committee, as it was called, chaired by the Chief Magistrate at the time, Lauritsen, here in Melbourne. And there were some fantastic people on that committee, mainly women, but amazing people who performed triage on families dropping from the cliffs, providing refuge, legal services, housing, financial services, all sorts of different things. And I just thought, after my experience on that committee, I just thought maybe we can put on our backpacks and trudge up that hill and prevent families from jumping in the first place. So we started up our charity, a registered charity called To Be Loved Network, where we produce resources to assist children navigate family violence and parental separation. And one of those first resources was Tommy and Tiger Terrier book, that little book I had. And it was at that conference, I think. And we then put together a film called Tommy, which has been highly successful. Tommy is embedded in a parenting program called Families in Transition through the National Center for State Courts in America. And the American courts order parents participate in that parenting program, which means they get to watch my film. And there's been some evidence-based research on that program. And so far it's said that it doesn't change the way people think about each other. They can still hate each other till the cows come home. But at the end of the day, the benefit of that program is that it has the impact of positively changing parents' behaviour towards each other in front of the children. So that's a really positive thing. Then what happened then? Then I wrote a book called Isla's Song, which is on international child abduction, which is fictional, but based on a true case I had. And then I wrote Millie and a Magic Puppet Show, as I've just said, and we have a film based on that book called Millie. And Millie's been nationally doing the circuit at the moment. It's been to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, going to the Gold Coast in 2 weeks, been to Darwin and Perth next week I'm going to. And we've been launching that around the country and having a panel of experts, a psychologist, a lawyer, independent children's lawyer, that sort of thing, discuss things about child trauma, impact, and the courts. And yeah, we've been doing that. So it's been a magic carpet ride for me, and it's really just brought into fruition a lot of things I'm passionate about, but using both my skill sets to bring those matters to life.
And what I've noticed is, because I deal with some court cases too from an advocacy perspective, in the States, I've been dealing with something in the States where I wish they would watch Tommy, because the amount of petitions that are going through between ex-husband and ex-wife without even considering the well-being of their children, where they actually don't realize what they're doing is harming children. So in terms of family court, what have you found is the switch in people where they start to realize this is actually harming my children, or this is not good for my children. I've been so focused on myself and the battle and, you know, the rah-rah within themselves. What, in your experience, what makes it be something that they decide to change their behaviour?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether the things that I'm doing has an impact at court level. I can't give you that by way of any affirmation. But sadly, Ballina, and very sadly, I would say the things that change people's behaviour are their hip pockets. The court proceedings cost an exorbitant amount of money. There's a case pathway now. I call it the cash pathway, which means people come back to court time and time again and have to spend money. It takes a significantly long period. There are enormous delays. I don't care what the court says. There are enormous delays in proceedings getting on for a final hearing. And people are just saying, no, I've had enough. I've had enough. One or both of us have to do something to work this out and be able to co-parent on some level, because by way of attrition, I can't do this anymore. And I think if you're going to drill down, there are multiple hypotheses why parents act the way they do towards their children. But you know what? Having a bit of sympathy for parents, I think they enter the process having experienced one of the most horrific things they can ever experience in life, apart from the death of a child, is the breakdown of their relationship. And when you layer that with family violence as well, it becomes even more compelling. So you have these parents entering the family law system that are traumatized. And what they do for the next 1 or 2 years is they pick the scabs of trauma. They still maintain this position where they're in this traumatic fog, trying to make sense of it all. Mothers usually, as the primary carers, usually have to deal with their children and all the upset, no doubt, the children are going through. And so they're traumatized. And what the court system does, and look, I'm not blaming the court system, because it's not the court system that generates the work, it's the parents. But the court system has a very blunt tool provides parents with an ordered outcome from a third-party judge who doesn't know these children and has various levels of experience in doing it. And what happens is that at the end of the hearing, after everyone's throwing mud at each other and the parents are more polarised, you wait for a judgment, usually 6 months to a year in some cases, and it's just, why would you do it? You'd have to ask yourself, why would you do it? Why would you go to court when you should be making every genuine attempt at mediation as a first stop? Court's not going to solve people's problems. It's just not going to do it. And in the middle of this battlefield are these little kiddies watching their parents and their parents' lawyers throw hand grenades at each other. And I'm a bit fed up of it, Ballina. I'm really fed up with the system. It just doesn't do kids any good at all.
I absolutely agree. And in the Australian court, there was one family case that I was supporting here in New South Wales. They had a children's liaison, like a solicitor in between.
An independent children's lawyer?
Yeah, the independent. What is your take on that? Do you think it's giving children a voice, or is it giving their own opinion to the situation?
Look, that's a vexed question as well. We have mostly decent independent children's lawyers. They are now mandated to speak with the children. They don't have to act on the children's wishes. They're not effectively their voice box for that purpose. What they do is that they propose orders to the court that they consider in the best interests of children. That's what they do. They usually liaise with the family report writers and get their views, make an assessment. They don't have to agree with the family report writer. So their role is interesting. It's not as forceful as one would think. In some cases, I think it only extends the period of the trial, the length of the trial. There are some excellent ones around, don't get me wrong, but I think most cases really don't need a child representative. I think the reports, if they're done appropriately, can get the voice of the child before the court. But it could be done better. I think there could be a lot more improvement in getting children's voices before the court. I don't know whether you've ever read any articles by Rachel Carson. She is a researcher and she does a lot of her articles you'll find on the Australian Institute of Family Studies. She has done a few articles on the voice of a child, and they're really well worth a read, you know, because most children report that they are not adequately represented in court proceedings, that they don't consider themselves a part of the proceedings, that they want more of a voice, and they want people not necessarily to do what they want, but to listen to what they've got to say. Yeah.
And it's part of the United Nations human rights. I mean, the Convention of Children's Rights, that's what it's about. And I feel like that we're failing even that in itself. So if you could just say, you said we could do it better, right? Yeah. So let's just say you had a clean slate of safeguarding children. What would you suggest? Just say we started again.
I would say get rid of the family court the way it's constructed at the moment. In my view, the court should never have been fused. I think we need a family law, or we could call it a relationships tribunal. I think people shouldn't be able to get before that tribunal unless they get special leave. That is, if the circumstances are urgent or there's some chronicity in terms of family violence or sexual abuse of children. I think the mediation centres should be more geared up to deal with family law cases. If the matter does go before the tribunal, I think there should be a judge, and I think there should be a social scientist sitting next to that judge. And I think every case should have its should be docketed to a social scientist. So that person remains with the child and the family throughout the case, and that judge and that social worker makes decisions about the best interests of children. Judges are not social scientists. And a lot of the stuff we deal with every day, day in, day out, is social science. And the problem is now at the family court, which as a result of recent decisions, is that they are saying that social jurisprudence is not something that the court really considers. It deals with cases, how they're presented to the court, and at the end of the case, they wave goodbye to the parties without a safety net, wishing their child all the best. Now, that's not the way to deal with it. I don't care what the full court says. It is not the way to deal with family law cases. It's not the way the family court started out in 1975, with a focus on a positive inquiry into the best interests of children. We have moved so far away from that, it's not funny. And I'm really disheartened with what the court's been saying lately in terms of their decision making. It just doesn't help children. So that's what I do. I'd have a much more focus on the people who are specialists in dealing with children.
I can see where you're coming from, because it is about relationships.
Yeah.
And I remember being part of the Deloitte hackathon team for domestic and family violence. And we said it's actually part of building healthy relationships. And we're focusing on very much, the authoritarian side of things, when I think we can manage that internally under mediation.
And maybe the tribunal could deal with contravening behaviours and things of that nature. It could be a lot more specialist. You see, I think sometimes, and we forget, people use the court proceedings as a mechanism to abuse the other party as well. And, in a lot of cases, mums, are not earning the same income as husbands, and they can't financially afford the proceedings. And then there's an imbalance in terms of litigation funding and representation. It's just one of those things. It can work really well, but it can work really poorly. If you can't afford a private report, which are very expensive these days, they're up to $10,000 to $12,000. I mean, who can afford that? But those people are very credible report writers, and they do a good job. But the ones at the court in-house, I'm finding some of the reports are very inadequate, and children complain because they're not given time with the report writer, appropriate time. Inquiries are not made of their therapists or psychologists or schools or sporting club. The sort of reports one would see in America are so more fulsome. They deal with all those dynamics, all those interactions children have. Here, we get a 15 to 30 minute observation session with the child and the parents. We get a bit of a chat to the kids, which usually goes 15 to 30 minutes, and then we get a report. So it's no wonder children walk away from these going, what the hell? What the hell? In reality, now I know I'll be shot down in flames if people say, oh, it's all very well for him. But at the end of the day, once upon a time, Ballina, we had a counselling section at the court. It worked so well. We had report writers that would see families first thing in the morning, do a duty report in the witness box, an oral report to the judge at the end of the day, would have ongoing involvement with that family. We had private counselling sessions in the court. We had sessions, supervised counselling after court proceedings had finished to provide a safety net for the parents and the children. All of that has gone. All of that has gone because the money has gone into this fusion of the courts, the funding of all of that, and there's no money left for counselling. So we have lost, it's like the family court has lost its legs and has retained its corpus and a couple of arms and a head, but there's no legs to walk the walk. That's what I'm...
Yeah, and I found there's a particular court case where, petition after petition, and it's just ridiculous things, especially the dynamic where one is a citizen and one is not a citizen.
Yeah.
And then petitions can happen, and then they don't see the children because they're not part of the country, and she is, or he is.
It's drowning in red tape. That's what it is. And, you know, I had a case, was it last week? It doesn't matter, but it was a relocation case. One of the parents wanted to relocate to another state with the kiddies, and that's fair enough. And they couldn't come to an agreement, which was unfortunate. And so I'm cross-examining this parent who was a good parent. And my client was a good parent as well. And I'm cross-examining them, and I came home and I thought, gee, what a great day's work, Darren. All I've done is made the parent feel inadequate, questioning their capacity to parent, making them no doubt feel embarrassed in a courtroom in front of other people and their former spouse. And what have I achieved? Not a lot, not a lot. And parents need to understand they need to sit down and work through these matters together with either good lawyers, and there are a lot of good lawyers around, or good therapists, or maybe a combination of the two of them to try and sort these matters out. Because, as I said, there's no other option but the court, but it's a very poor taskmaster, a very, very poor taskmaster.
And it's quite interesting when you state, is the child loved? Does the child feel loved during this process? Is that what inspired you to write Isla Song, your latest book?
Yeah, so Isla Song's a novel. It's I don't know, it's a long novel, but it's about a little girl who's abducted by a mother and taken to the Orkney Islands from Melbourne. Okay. And it's based on a true story. It did happen. I was acting for the father in that case. They found the child and returned the child to Melbourne, fortunately, through the Hague Convention. But my book is set back in the 1950s and 60s before the Hague Convention was set up. And it really delves into the emotions of that little girl, what she would have gone through, trying to make sense of it all, trying to find her father eventually. I'm just trying to think of Marilyn Freeman in England, who's a lecturer there. She does fantastic research work into the impact of children being abducted or removed from the other parent. And I'm really interested in the emotional dynamics of that and the fallout for children. Because that's the other thing with court proceedings. We look at things, a lot of the times, we look in the rear vision mirror if you're sitting in a car to inform us about the future. But there should be a little bit more looking out the front window of the car to the road ahead and trying to imagine how all this is going to impact on a child, because it really does. It's a lot of times children are paid lip service in the court. I mean, you just mentioned the United States Nations Convention. It's in the Family Law Act. But
what's going on?
Apart from me making submissions about it, it's overlooked. It's overlooked by the court, you know.
So who's overlooking it?
The judges. I'll say they consider it, but they don't. I've quoted articles in that convention to them, and I can tell you this, it's not, from my experience, other practitioners might have a different experience, but it is not given proper weight or consideration.
You talked about previously that the judges are not psychologists, they're not social workers, they are there in a different capacity and are making decisions that are sociologically impacting the child. So for them to be in that position, I think you're right. We've got it all wrong.
Yeah, we have. I think we have. You know, I think the problem is things have changed. The Family Law Act has been amended that many times, and I just think it's almost at the stage where we have to start again.
Do you think that a case should not go to family court if they haven't done mediation?
Well, that's the rule. You're not supposed
Okay,
to,
right.
unless there are serious circumstances, urgent circumstances, family violence, and there's a couple of other exceptions. So that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. And the court also provides opportunities for parties to mediate along the case pathway as well, including providing family dispute resolution in-house at no cost to the parties. The court also provides judge settlement conferences where a judge will read the papers, talk to the parties, not the child, and tell the parties, basically give the parties a quote what they think and why they think something should be done along those lines. So people do have the opportunities, but the problem is parents' contempt for each other and their lack of trust fuels the conflict. That's the problem. All I can do is make submissions, and I always bring it back to the child because that's what the judges are there for, the best interests of children. Judges are empowered by the legislation and guided by that legislation and have to comply with that legislation. Otherwise, their judgments are appealed. From that point of view, the judges' hands are kind of tied. And the people we should be talking to are the people that make the legislation, that make the rules. And so we need strong lobbies to Parliament to make any effective changes. That's what we need. But you know what? You never see politicians sitting in the court seeing what goes on. You never see the Attorney General visit the courts and work out whether the judges are up to standard or whether the proceedings are being conducted appropriately and whether they're properly focused on children's best interests. You don't see any of that. And what we get is a lot of lip service. You know what I'd like to see, Ballina? I would like to see a Minister for Children.
I agree.
Someone who's an experienced in the social work field, someone who's trauma informed, someone who knows about the family law, a bit of a mix, I suppose. But we need a Minister for Children to rally these changes.
And I agree with that, because when I was part of the National Task Force to criminalise coercive control, there was no minister about children's rights.
No.
Having them advocate and lobby. We met up on Zoom with the Attorney General during this process, but I found that it was us trying to lead it, like lobbying, advocacy, and it took so much work that it became a huge voice that ministers couldn't reject or, dismiss. So sometimes I think this creative process actually helps lobby or advocates or broadcast. So with your work, with what you do, being creative and telling those lived experience stories, do you find that helps with the overarching cause that you're doing with the foundation as well?
Well, I hope so. That's the whole purpose. But there are a lot of people hurting out there. I've got a TikTok, thanks to my daughter, who's a bit of a, Instagram influencer. And I'm very careful what I put up because I don't want to breach any confidentiality. So I have to be very careful, in any interview position or TikToks or anything. Anyhow, I'll give you an example. I was making a complaint about the delays in the court system. I won't bore you, but the case had to be adjourned for various reasons. My client wasn't seeing the child, and we got an adjourned date, which is in 12 months' time. Okay. And I was very dissatisfied, as he was. So I went on to TikTok and I had a bit of a whinge about that for about 55 seconds. And I got 56,000 likes and I got 1,000 messages into my email box on that TikTok. Now, that's just me. But you can imagine cumulatively how impactful these things that are causing people grief how it must impact society, and kids at school. People say, oh, they can't concentrate, so we'll put them on Ritalin.
Oh,
I'm not saying don't put them on Ritalin, because some kids probably need it, but there's a lot of kids out there that probably don't, that they're just so torn up with what's going on at home that they're not concentrating at school. They're afraid, they feel unsafe. It's just not good enough, and it really upsets me.
I found that it was exhausting. I've also got to make sure that there's not burnout, that there's self-care. So for those that do care, like yourself, and are watching this podcast, who are in that field, what do you do to self-care? Or maybe is this your creative side that you let loose?
So I do. I do acting. I'm very embedded in Melbourne's theatre community. I've just finished a musical.
Oh, which one?
I sing. I just did Urinetown.
Oh, lovely.
And so I love doing that. I love riding. I like hopping on my bike and just letting it take me to a story that I want to embellish and maybe write. I'm involved with screenwriters at the moment, one in LA and one here in Melbourne, which we're devising 2 movies on children parenting matters.
Yeah.
So that's, and I've got a beautiful wife and 3 amazing kids, and that's my happy places on the beach. I love the beach. But yeah, so it's really important. I did an article, a little blog on LinkedIn the other day about self-care. I'm on the Victorian Bar Health and Wellbeing Committee as well. And it's really important to take care of yourself, because we deal with a lot of stress ourselves and our jobs, and a lot of vicarious stress through our clients, through getting a rough go in court with a judge on a bad day, with our opponents, with their clients, with your solicitors. There's a heap of vicarious trauma that comes our way, and yeah, you've got to deal with it. I think you've got to, when you're involved in this pool, whether you're a lawyer, a social scientist, a judge, or whatever, you've got to learn to deal with that trauma or stress in a way that takes you to a happy place. Because if you don't, you're going to get burnt out, and nothing's perfect in the system or anything. I was talking to a judge today, and he's got a mouse pad that says there's no need to be perfect, and I think that's really important. We can't be perfect. We're only human beings at the end of the day. I don't care who you are. We're only human beings, and we can only do our best. And that's what's important. So, yeah, they're sort of the things I live by.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, for me, I mean, I'm a trained opera singer, so I love to classically sing and jazz.
Amazing.
I've been on the fashion catwalk and, acting and so forth.
Amazing.
But that's my happy place, I guess, to just be, in a world where I can also create things. But I went into writing the safeguarding way because I felt like my, let's say, throat chakra was blocked in this field, so I couldn't be truthful about my lived experience, and it's quite a confronting lived experience, as you would know, being in this area. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to write about it all. I'm just going to write. I'm going to create content. We did some documentaries and so forth. So and then people started to come towards me and say, I dealt with that. That's similar to my story. Or can you help me with this? Or it opened me into a different way of looking at things. Do you get that kind of feedback?
I think when you've been around for a while, the gift that you can provide to people is giving them some opportunities to think outside the square. That's where you need to be creative. And every case is different. Every case has different needs. Every child is a unique child. They shouldn't be rubber stamped at any stage. And even I'm on a bit of a soapbox at the moment about SIB ships, where we can't brand all children in that sibship as being the same. They're all unique little kiddies, you know, and they've all got their own different relationships within that sibship with their brothers or sisters. So I think that's really important too, to identify the individual needs of children in families rather than just grouping them together as the children, you know.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And so with your 2 films, apart from everything else, I know your wife must be a patient wife.
Without her, she's the cement between the bricks. Without her, we wouldn't be able to do I wouldn't be able to do the things I do, honestly. Ballina, she's incredible. She's a very caring person. She is a nurse, 2 to 3 days of work. She cares for people who suffer from AIDS.
Okay.
And some of her clients she picks up from the bus shelters. They're homeless. She takes them to the hospital and tends to their wounds. And she's a bit of a Mother Teresa. So, and as far as the family goes, she's a mother lioness. She protects her children. She would do anything to protect them, you know. And I think that's really, that's what's really made it a little bit easier and life certainly more enjoyable, having a wife like that, but also having a partner that you both make sacrifices for each other, compromises. She's probably better at that than me, but just someone that you can work with. I don't know what the magic is, but I think just compromise. I think there's always one person in a relationship that makes more compromises than the other. I think, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think that relationships you have to work on. And I think these days, it's often not death to us till we part, it's till we get sick of each other. And the you know, the little kids are the ones that are left without mums and dads, you know, in the same house. But sometimes that can be a good thing when there's family violence, you know. Family violence is just so rife at the moment. It's just, I don't know what it is. It just, every case you get has got a flavour of family violence.
Been through all of that, but I chose to do the Nordic version of restorative justice. So I got a lot of flack from people. They just see, go to court, get the punitive measures, and I didn't look at the health wise and the sociology of it and how healing can actually be a long-term thing. So my next question, obviously you're in film. How are you incorporating children participation in that? Are you?
Oh, yeah. So I'm very careful about that. So we go through a casting process. The parents are there for that. Once we cast the child or children, we have a psychologist talk to them. And then after or during the process, if needed, there's a psychologist on standby. And certainly at the end of the process, we debrief them. Because you don't know what's going inside their little heads. Tommy, the little boy who played Tommy, he was about 9 or 10 at the time, and Millie was 10 years of age. So, you know, they're at a critical time in their lives. They're in that latency period, forming relationships with parents and things. But I'm very careful. So we make sure the children are safe. It has to be a priority. Yeah.
And do you weave in lived experience from children and your cases from children into the script of your films?
Definitely.
With children, obviously they're young. I'm going to touch on a real issue right now. A lot of people say children are making it up. They don't know what they're on about. I'm the adult. I know what's best for them. I don't need to listen to them. What do you agree with that? I mean, obviously not with your work, but what would you say when people have this perspective?
Well, you know, when I first started family law, naively, I thought children never lie. And I don't like that word lie. It's a pretty harsh word, but I think they misrepresent things all the time because they're stressed, because they feel unloved, because they feel they don't want to be disloyal to one parent or another. So sometimes they do misrepresent the situation. So And that's why social scientists are so important, because they look behind that and delve into the etiology of that particular behavior by the child and determine whether those comments are factual or whether they're delusional or disassociative or whatever, and really work out what's what. So I wouldn't like to be too harsh that children, misrepresent the situation all the time. But as far as parents knowing better, well, that has to be tested in court. Every family's different, but you can't be too hard on parents, because people behave or react in different ways, and sometimes they go into defense mode, and the outcomes for children are poor, and they get perceived by their ex-partners that they're alienating the child. I'd love $1 for every time that's mentioned, alienating. If you ask those people, what does it mean? A lot of them wouldn't even understand what it means. I can tell you this now, that I reckon in 35 years as a barrister, I've had probably 5 pure alienation cases, because they're just not common as people think. It's it's alienating behavior, but it's not necessarily alienation in its pure form. So, but the guts of it is that parents don't always know what's best, and children are not born with parenting manuals, and sometimes we can learn from people who know better.
Have you dealt with that kind of confrontation, or maybe you've seen cases where the police are ordered to do something and they're taking out the orders, but the child is traumatized?
Yeah, of course they are. Can you imagine, you're at home with your mum and dad, and next minute a police officer's knocking on your door and takes your father away handcuffed because the mother's put in for an intervention order, or there's been some, ruckus going on in the house, and mum or dad have called the police and they turn up. I mean, how horrific for a child.
And they blame themselves. That's what I found. Children look at it, they blame themselves. And it's not that they're lying, but they're just trying to make sense of it all and cope with it all. So this is what we're doing to children.
Yeah.
Institutional views.
I think there's a lot of ways we can do things better, but it's so complicated. It's very complicated. But I really do believe, as I said before, a good start would be to appoint a minister for children and let them start delegating and start addressing these particular areas of concern.
For the resources, what are your favorite resources that you guys produce? So we've got Tommy the books. Anything else you're working on?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, tobeloved.org.au, or my website, darrenmort.com.au. So we've got Tommy and Tiger Terry. We've got Millie and Her Magic Puppet Show, which is a resource, books for kids, because I find parents reading these books might help kids understand and produce, as I said, fertile ground for discussions between kids and parents. We've got a film, Tommy, which is on Apple ITV, or we're setting up license agreements for people to be able to use it, professionals or otherwise. We've got a film, Millie, which is currently doing the circuit. That'll be finished in about 6 months' time, and we'll be able to license that as well. And I'm working on a script involving 2 gay dads who have a Vietnamese surrogate mother, and we're looking at doing that into a movie. And I'm developing a family law series with a mob in America. I've also written another film called Sammy, and it's about the fallout of a child growing up in a violent family violence. So we've got a few things. And Vince Papaleo and myself, he's a clinical psychologist, we do a Tough Tell series. So we go around the country and we do a day session as a CPD. We involve my 2 films, Tommy, or the charities film as well, Tommy, and also Millie. And we discuss matters relating to resist, refuse dynamics, parental alienation, child trauma, personality disorders, things like that. Certainly worthwhile. Yeah.
I love a good road show. I find it to be so community engaged, and people coming out. It's great because you connect with people right away. It's
Sure,
you're not
Ballina.
behind the scenes anywhere, and they come up to you and they just love the conversation.
Yeah, it's great.
And then I start thinking, oh no, I have to create more content because like
Yeah, that's right.
there's more I've got to tell. Like so.
Yeah, no,
So that is incredible, very
yeah,
incredible what you're doing.
thanks.
And I think of everything as we end, and I'd like to thank you for coming on board to be my first guest. And I hope I get more coming on, or more
I hope
footage, or
so.
just coming to your launches. I love the States, so I love going to the States.
Yeah, me too.
Just
Yeah.
incredible. We like to end with the statement of, what does safeguarding mean to you?
Gee whiz, that's a big one. Safeguarding to me is protecting our most precious gifts from future trauma and allowing our kids to live a life taking away that trauma and safeguarding them as parents to be contributing members of this community and sound from a psychological and emotional sense. That's what that is.
Well, thank you so much, Darren. I'm so grateful to reconnect with you, and I
Lovely.
hope going to be more reconnections further down the track. Absolutely. I don't know if you need a singer or an actor. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
Lived
don't
experience.
worry. Don't worry. I'll be calling on you. Don't you worry about that.
This is how we collaborate, our artists, mixed with advocacy. But
Yeah.
no, it's really, really important because it's such a serious topic, and how we communicate that and broadcast it, as well as trying to create movement in the systems, in the institutions. It's a collective effort. So I am I am so grateful, and I have the utmost respect for you and the work that you do, and also the work that your wife and your family do in supporting this. It's a teamwork. So thank you so much for being part of this podcast, and all the links will be down here for people to search, and I'll be writing a few more articles about it as well, just to get that message out. And
thank you so much.
You're welcome. So this is the Safeguarding Way. We thank you for joining us. So subscribe, as also see our Substack channel, and don't forget to visit Darren and all the wonderful resources that he has. Take a look at it. It will be absolutely impactful. So whether you're a professional, whether you work in the system, or whether you've dealt with your own lived experience, I'm sure you will find it so helpful. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.